Big round of applause for the new speaker. That's it.
Everyone, this is the first time I've ever done this. I'm not about to talk to you about it. It's extremely broad, so just bear with me. My name is Olly, and I was the co-founder of Snackcidents, which was the UK's edible cookie dough brand. So if any of you don't understand or don't know or never heard of what edible cookie dough is versus regular cookie dough, the easiest way to explain it is it's the difference in flour. That's really it. Like, you can say that it's different whether there's eggs in there or not. In the UK, there's not really a risk of salmonella. It's different in the States, but here it's down to the flour. So what we've got here really is a story of me talking about, and I can't actually disagree with a single word that Elliot said. Like, it's just absolutely brilliant what you put. It's spot on, absolutely spot on. And I appreciate my title was very similar to Elliot's. It really should be 8 mistakes that I made and what I'll do differently next time. So the way that I've written this is purely talking to my former self rather than telling you what you should be doing. So my journey, if we actually take a step back before this slide, I actually started running businesses when I was in secondary school. When I was in secondary school, there was this craze with these little squidgy alien things, and I basically decided that this is what I wanted to do. I was going to monopolise the business. So I went down to the local gift shop, bought all of the stock in there, so no one else at school could buy it. Then I went into school and started selling it. To try and make it look professional, I bought these little button bags, put the little squidgy aliens inside. Obviously, looking at it now, maybe look like a drug dealer. And then my teacher confiscated them all off me and banned me from doing it. So that was my first business. Gone. Then I became a teenager, and I don't know if anyone's going to remember it, but there was a website back then called Big Cartel, and I launched a clothing brand. And I was going through an emo phase at the time, so this was all very highly focused on clothing for that clientele. And then I went off to university, decided that I didn't want to run that anymore. I wasn't selling that much, so again, that's the next business over. Then I go to university. At university, I discovered dance music and fall in love with it and become a nightclub promoter. So then I leave university, I go to a company called Muscle Foods. I was the marketing manager there for a year, and realised that corporate isn't for me. I'd done a year at university where I'd worked in corporate, and literally it was just a bunch of 40-year-old blokes coming up to me being like, I wish I was you. And I was like, I do not want to be that guy. So I decided I wanted to follow my passion, and I went into music events, nightclub promotion, which is all great. I got to travel all over Europe, done festivals, played on boat parties, loads of fun, but there was fucking money in it. And it got to the point where basically decided needed to turn my life around, start another business. And what we kind of saw here is that in the UK, we've got Millie's Cookies, which is a really great household brand, but it kind of got sold on, and it's a company called SSB, who basically has all of the railway and airport food brands, and they really couldn't care less about it. They were completely ignoring it. So the original idea was to create a mail order cookie company, because back in 2017, this wasn't really happening. And then at this point, it was around about that kind of whole tasty era where everything on Facebook going viral was all these kind of tasty videos. And there was a company in the States doing edible cookie dough, and it was just literally all over your feeds. And there was no one doing it in the UK, so we saw a gap in the market for it. So whilst we were doing this, we were basically doing R&D, creating our own recipes within our home kitchen. And we found that we were eating the dough before it went in, and we're like, literally everyone's favourite Ben & Jerry's flavour is the cookie dough flavour, right? And this is one of the things, like this is before Ben & Jerry's did their pouches, so we kind of saw another gap in the market there. So we, first of all, how we started this, created an Instagram page, basically just started posting cookie dough porn, and create a sign up, and we're like, sign up for when we launch, and when we launch, we'll send you a voucher to get free top cookie dough. And we ran this for a good number of months whilst we were doing our R&D, and then we got through to April 2017, and by that time we built up like a 30,000 email list. We put everything on sale on our Shopify store and literally posted, and because we kind of built that demand and that hype there already, literally within minutes we got our first sale. And I remember the first thing with that is like we both cried because it actually realised that this could actually be something we could do. And we literally, my partner Anya, She called into her job and called a sickie for the next day. She was just way too excited. Stayed up all night just manufacturing cookie dough in our home kitchen. So then just to kind of fast forward a bit, we grew the business over the next couple of years from home. And what we found is that we grew it and grew it and grew it. And at this point, we lived in a terrace street in the Nottingham City Centre. So literally the whole street is just filled with students. And then there was like one family opposite us. And we got grown so big by this point that we were literally getting pallets delivered to the house. And then we got so big that I was trying to get boxes delivered to the house. And these guys were like, we can't get our lorries down the street. We can't deliver them. So at that point, we then had to go and find a manufacturing facility. And what we're very lucky about in Nottingham is that there was an EU-funded food park which is designed specifically for startups. So we moved into this facility, but actually a step before that is, the reason we moved into this facility is I approached literally every manufacturer in the UK to get them to make our product. And because the main difference between cookie dough and edible cookie dough is the flour, none of them would touch it because of the gluten being airborne and the difference in the flour for that reason. I never wanted to go into manufacturing, but it just became our only option. Luckily, we had a facility we moved straight into, and it was all designed ready to BRC spec, which was absolutely perfect. So we fast forward, by the time things came crashing down, we'd sold over 1 million tons of cookie dough, over 130,000 customers, 250,000 orders, and did 4.5 million in revenue. So some of the highlights of the journey was our original name was Cookie Dough, and really all that is just a mixture of 2 words, gooey and cookie. But after launching, what we found is we were getting a lot of abuse on social media in DMs, and apparently the first name is a racial slur that was used by the Americans in the Vietnam War. Had absolutely no idea. So at that point, we had to do a complete rebrand, which was just like creating a new business in itself, ripping up the packaging, you name it. But by this point, we'd already got into Selfridges. So we had to completely rebrand all of that. And Selfridges literally just came about by accident. They just seen our social media. They'd seen that there was just an absolute shit ton of engagement. And just literally, women just emailed us. And the thing about Selfridges compared to any other supermarket, they do not ask any questions whatsoever. They literally have like nothing there. They at this point, we were still manufacturing in our own kitchen. We were putting the products in Selfridges. Then going on to that, a couple of years ago, got invited to go on a TV show called Aldi's Next Big Thing. And then if we fast forward to this year, everything finally came crashing down. So as I just kind of touched on, we had the Selfridges discovery, completely organic. But during this time, and one of the main reasons for our success, there was 2 main reasons. There was that kind of early days of building up the following on social media. One of some of the things that we did, these tactics do not apply anymore. So one of the early tactics on Instagram was follow and follow. So you would follow people, they would follow you back. And I'd literally just do it every single day, every single morning until Instagram was like, no, we're going to ban your account and do that again. The next tactic was the pre-influencer stage. So before influencers really was even a thing, as soon as someone got kicked off of Love Island, I'd DM them and be like, I want to send you this product for free. Just don't ask anything from them whatsoever. You just send it to them. 70% came back and like, yeah, sure, we'll get something for free. And then they would post us like 50% of the time. They post a story. Or so just going to get a drink. So at this point, we started to get this real kind of build up of celebrities and that, and then it got to the point where, like, if these Love Island guys are posting it, let's just try every celebrity going. So you just started hitting people up, and maybe 30% of the time, like, you were getting them just saying, yeah, I want something for free, and then if half of them, like, do a story, absolutely great. At no point do you ever ask them for anything, but I generally, if you try that now, I don't think it's going to work. These guys will turn around and be like, yeah, like 10 grand, please. And then the next thing, TikTok kind of launched, and what we kind of analysed here about how's this going to work. So the first thing, every time there was something new, you just need to get on it early and test it out. If it doesn't work, there's no problem. If it does work, great, we're going to blow up and go viral. And what we kind of saw with that is like the aesthetic side of things. We want things that look pleasing, and we saw that was going viral, and that is really how we managed to get a bunch of TikToks, which went over 1 million. So then going over to the TV side of things, we went on Aldi's Next Big Thing. They approached us, asked us to send in the products for it. You get there on the day, all sounds great. Went into this being like, wow, it's like matching up against everyone else, looking at what the guys are up against. And we were quite an established brand by this point. And everyone there was sort of more people that were doing kind of market stalls. So we're like, oh, right, we're easily going to go through to the next round. And then that was a real like punch in the gut. We're first out, like 30 seconds on TV, like, nah, this is never going to work. In addition to that, I got approached by Dragon's Den 3 times. Turned them down every single time. The first 2 times was because of the name and because of the amount of abuse that we'd have on social media. I was so scared of going on national TV and being called a racist. The third time was not that long before everything came crumbling down. And the amount of work that goes into this, like they do all their due diligence before you even get through to filming. And then you kind of told that there's like no even guarantee you're going to be filming. Like this thing would take weeks to put together. So I think they had a lot of problems in the past whereby people were maybe lying about stuff and their deals fell through, but like it's crazy the amount of work that goes into that. But yeah, so this is another one thing that we did, the manufacturing side of things. So we had to build out this facility, implement the manufacturing, and then I think the hardest real kind of lesson with that was bringing staff in. The big jump is going from just being yourselves running the business to then bringing in staff. Okay, so let's talk about the real kind of lows and everything. As hard as I tried, I was never able to get investors on board. So we got to the point where it was funded. Originally, that kind of scene that you saw in the very first shot was when the Mirror did an article. So when I was making no money from nightclub events, basically we just sold everything that we owned on eBay, made 1,200 quid, and that's how we started the business. And then as the business grew, the only funding that we were using was either through credit cards or loans. Then the next thing that really kind of made things difficult was the cost explosion. Like I didn't even have a clue until Russia invaded Ukraine that Ukraine is the biggest exporter of rapeseed oil. So all fat costs went absolutely soaring. Then previous government, the minimum wage has gone up multiple times in the past 3 years, absolutely crazy. Ingredient prices just went absolutely nuts. Food is not a good industry to be in right now, and I can't actually ever see it improving. For instance, cocoa up 200%. Flour and wheat was massively up. Then, for instance, there's just things that you cannot account for. Like, for instance, there was a typhoon in Madagascar, so all the vanilla costs went absolutely soaring. And then, in terms of, we just had facility nightmares. When you're manufacturing, it was like running 2 businesses. So we basically had a marketing business trying to sell our product, but then we were manufacturing in-house as well. And we had, like, as you can see in this picture here, someone very kindly decided one day in broad daylight just to come and smash through into our office and break in there. We then had literally people that must have run a script or something. They literally just copy and pasted our website, changed the branding slightly to just try and take us on. And like overnight, just everything dropped off because of that. And then going back to the naming thing, we literally had this one person that was threatening to come and burn the building down with us inside it. And then the biggest hit of all is when it all came crumbling down. So this is the main thing that I really would want to get across to myself when launching my next business, and anything that I can pass on to anyone today. And that's the biggest learnings that you can take is from when things go wrong, not when they go right. LinkedIn is filled with positivity and look how great this is, but the actual truth is much different to that. And the best learnings you can make are from those where they've made mistakes. So the first thing that I messed up with personally that I'd say to myself next time is choose the market, not your emotions. So for instance, I would always recommend picking something of pain. I saw a trend and tried to jump on that, and it just doesn't work. You need to choose a pain that requires a solution and to fix that solution. And then find someone who's already successful. Do not try and reinvent the wheel. Do not try and create a brand new market. For instance, if you go out there and you kind of see that there is a skincare brand, and that is something that would be a really good example of this. Just have a look. There's like SEM tools out there where you can see if this is already doing 300k visits per month, then it's just a guaranteed winner. You just need to find a way to look at what they're doing, improve on what they're doing, and do it better, and introduce it to a new demographic. Lesson 2, complexity kills. So avoid models that scale badly. Not only were we manufacturing in-house, our product was chilled, which meant we were shipping chilled. Like 98% of our business was D2C. We were shipping raw mail, DPD. So we had to have extended packaging, which would keep the product chilled the whole way throughout. And this just added on massive costs. We were subsidising every single order on the delivery cost. Like we were charging the customer £5, it was costing us £9. And then complexity drains everything, like literally everything. Your website, your business, your SKUs, every little thing, make it as simple as possible. As soon as you try to make it complex, it's just not worth it. So the next thing that I would do next time is I put my face on my brand. So naturally, I'm an introvert. And I just never really wanted to put my face to the brand. And funnily enough, when one of our advertising agencies finally convinced me to do a founder's ad, it was one of our best performing ads. So although we got an absolute shit ton of views, a shit ton of followers, what we were lacking on in some sense was engagement because we didn't have that natural connection. So someone within our industry who is absolutely a really good example of this is a brand called Get Baked. And that's purely because the brand owner has a personality, people can relate to it, it's funny, and it doesn't come naturally to everyone, but just by putting yourself out there, people will be able to connect to you. Lesson 4. And I know that there's some advertising agencies in here and would not agree with this, but this isn't me saying, like, I've worked with pretty much every major advertising agency in the UK, and I think they all hate me. But the main thing here is not to not work with them, but to understand what you're hiring them for in the first place. So literally what I would do right now, I would go to YouTube and I would learn everything from scratch, which is what I'm already in the process of doing. Because what I found is I was paying these guys a lot of money and it was causing the business a lot of stress because the results weren't bad. But at the end of the day, I didn't really understand what they were doing. And the main thing now is that, in the nicest way possible, a media buyer right now is a glorified VA. If you're hiring an agency, you need to ensure that they're providing you with the creative. I literally just had guys that were just going in and inventing the budgets every day. And that's the whole industry's moved past it. So in this case, I would say master organic before paid, because the best thing you could do here is find your audience, literally like what Megan said earlier, build that community and have that personal connection. And then when you start running the paid ads, it's like adding fuel to the fire and everything will just take off from there. If you've got that foundation, then everything will just run smoothly from there. And also don't try to force it. Like sometimes, like with our product, there was some slight seasonality. If things are down, pull back, and when things are good, be ready to absolutely fly and push hard. So lesson 5 is another mistake that I made was I didn't approach retail early enough. I got a bit cocky because we got Selfridges off of nothing, like it was literally just someone hitting us up. And we had the same thing with Sainsbury's, we had the same thing with Morrison's, which is all great, but they never amounted to a deal. And what we didn't do is when things started to get tough, when there was a downturn and we really needed to diversify beyond being purely D2C, we're in a situation where we were like chasing getting these retail contracts, and in the end we couldn't get one in time, which left us in a situation where we were screwed. So what you need to do is, like, I've spoken to other business owners recently in this situation. They're like, oh, we're not ready for that. Just get the conversations going, have the connections there. Because with retail, it's a relationship business. So it's all about having that relationship with the buyer. And these buyers, they move on all the time, they'll change. But they'll introduce you to the next one. Just have them foundations in place. And the other thing is like, we had a Shopify store, which was doing the bulk. And we also had TikTok shop, which, to put it politely, I freaking hated TikTok shop. It did good volume, but the quality of customers are crap. They just discount everything, they devalue your brand. But because the volume's there, it's kind of all right in that sense. But if I went back in again, I'd purposely be ensuring that we're not being too reliant on TikTok shop. The one thing that I wish I'd done, which I didn't do, was actually launching on Amazon. And everyone looks at this and kind of thinks like, oh, I'm going to take buyers away from my website. And in fact, from talking to other business owners, what the real truth is that there's just some people that just do not want to buy from your website. They do not want to pay for shipping, or they want that absolute guarantee of safety that they know it's going to be with them the next day. They know that if something goes wrong, they know that like hell, like if they don't like the taste of it, Amazon's going to give them a refund. There's just some people that you will never convert on your website. So the best thing you can do is launch on Amazon as soon as possible. It is not going to mess you up. Yeah, so I kind of touched on this earlier, and complexity is a real kind of conversion killer. And that's not to say it was a major problem with our website, because we were doing over 100K hits a month. We had over approximately on average about 3% conversion rate. And compared to when we first started out, we were sitting on like a £16 AOV, which obviously pre-iOS 14 is all well and good. You're not really investing too much there. Your costs are much lower. You're running things from home. You've not got all the overheads of being a facility. But literally, iOS 14 happened, and overnight, it was like literally someone had just like turned the ads off, like, and literally nothing would work whatsoever. So it took some real time to really take things back. And then over a couple of years, we got that AOV up from 16 to 36. But the way that we did that was by selling to people in volume. And we were working with a 3PL, and our 3PL was charging us by pick. So the more tubs that we sold to customers, the more costs that we had increasing with that. So we built this custom builder on our website. And as you can see here, we kind of had 3 options for the customer: 5 tubs, 10 tubs, 15 tubs. But the problem is that we gave the customer too much choice. So Shopify has this 100 variant limit, and I know there are workarounds now compared to where we built this out, but this was a very complex custom solution, which over the years probably cost tens of thousands of pounds to build out. And what would have been better off is Shopify they put this in place to restrict the options that you give your customers, because they know much better than us. They've got the data to prove it, that you do not want to distract your customer in any kind of way. Make it as simple as possible. You need to tell them exactly what they should be buying. The more options you give them, the more chance there is for them to fall off. So what you can't see here is if they selected 15 tubs, they would then scroll down, and then they would pick out 15 different flavors. And that's just way too much. And we were purely doing it because we were desperate to increase our AOV. And the biggest problem that we had with the food product, it's low value, and it's not valued by a customer. For instance, you can sell skincare products, and you can say charge 20 to 50 quid for that, and people value it. They're like, yeah, it's going to make my skin great. Problem was, we were selling something unhealthy. So pushback from the customer was like, do I really want this? Or I'm going on a diet. And if you sell to people in bulk, you then struggle to get them onto a subscription, so they're not coming back again. They buy too much, they have to put it in the freezer. So again, I just never touch food again. It's just not valued enough by the customer. So 7, and this is the biggest and hardest lesson of my entire life. And I really, really cannot stress this enough, because I would never want anyone to go through what I'm going through right now, is if you're in a situation with your business and you cannot source funds from anywhere, you need to take a hard, long look in the mirror and really ask yourself, is this working? Is this really working? Because I got into a situation where the business required cash flow, it required funding, and the only place I could get money from was to personally guarantee it myself. The business is now fallen apart, and I'm in a situation where I've not only lost my business, but I've pretty much destroyed my own personal life as well. So if you're ever in that situation and you're thinking about it, please just ask yourself, I was so blind to it. I believe I'm going to get that retail contract. I'm going to, in 10 years' time, I'm going to get bought out by Hershey's. You get blind to it. And sometimes you need to take that step back and have an external viewpoint that looks at it like, is this really working? If you're in this situation where no one will give you any form of further financing without you personally guaranteeing it, is this working? And really what kind of brought everything falling down is I needed to go and get more funding. I went to NatWest and they said no. And that was actually possibly the best thing that's happened to me in my entire life, because I can still be here today, still ripping my hair out, trying to keep this business running. And although I'm in a terrible, terrible situation and position right now, the only way is up from here. The lessons that I've learned will take me forward. So lesson 8, and here is a real kind of lesson. So I was reading a book the other day, and it's called How to Be Fucking Happy, because it's not something that I've been in a long time. And he basically says, life has a way of giving you little signs. And these signs were, throughout running this business, my health deteriorated and deteriorated. This is just one time where I had to go into hospital and I was trying to find out what was wrong with me. They never actually managed to find anything, but suddenly, as soon as the business has collapsed, I'm feeling the best I have in my entire life. It was just stress related. And what was happening here is I was just trying to do too much. There was no money available to hire people, so one of these things is to outsource as much as possible. But the money wasn't there, so I was trying to do it from the bookkeeping to managing the staff, and it just all became way too much. So you need to delegate as much as possible. And the first thing I'd do next time around would be to write SOPs for absolutely everything. And then towards the end, we had this amazing team member, and she became our production manager. And literally, it was the biggest weight off of my shoulders. I was just able to hand everything over to her, and she started managing the entire day-to-day of the manufacturing, to systemize everything, focus on your strategy. and literally outsource anything, and I mean absolutely anything. If it's not driving revenue, then that's your focus. But anything else, then you need to outsource that in some kind of way. Because I neglected my health for 8 years, and it got to the point where I nearly killed myself because of it. Just do not be too stubborn. Like, I literally was holding on to this business for dear life. And at the end of it, actually like, things are going to get worse before they get better, but it generally is the best thing that ever happened to me. So just finally here, this isn't me telling you how to run a business, because obviously I've not done a very good job of it, but when I do it again, not if, I'm going to basically, for the next 30 days, if you sign up to this, I will give you every lesson that I've learned in terms of doing this, because I've really only just been able to scratch the surface today. So if you're interested in that whatsoever, I can go much, much deeper with this. I just didn't have the time to do it. Yeah, feel free to sign up there. So finally here, I thought this meeting was really kind of good, because if you're sitting in this room right now, you're one of the very few people that really kind of understands the pressure that we all put ourselves through. Especially if it's your family. Like, we're all very lonely, we're all business owners, and a lot of times people don't understand what we're going through. So it's thanks to Paul for having us here today. Any questions?
I know we went briefly at the beginning of the day, we get a chance to chat. I actually have a food brand, so can we have 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay, I just want to come and deeper brain.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so of course, you mentioned you went through a very dark period. It's good to see you here first and foremost. But like, how? So my question is, when times are that difficult, when things have happened, your business and personal, how do you kind of put yourself mentally in a state to go, I need to keep going, whatever direction, the business or personal? How do you, what, you know what I mean? How do you get yourself in that state to go, I need to keep going forward?
So, yeah, literally up until the business went into liquidation, it was just purely the terror of the personal guarantees kicking in. That was, I'd lost all passion for the business. I was purely just like an autopilot. The only thing desperately trying to keep it afloat was to avoid the personal situation that I could see ahead. After this, I mean, so we went into liquidation at the end of June. So it's all very raw and fresh. And I thought, like, the easiest thing I could do right now is just go and hide and give it a few years, build something else, and come back and I can tell you, oh yeah, I went through this. But there's no one out really doing that right now. And I know for sure, like, I've spoken to countless business owners, specifically within the food industry, that like, this is almost like an epidemic right now. The food industry is so fucked. Like, for instance, there's some real major players that have died in the past year. There was a Project D. There's one that went just last week, who were called Junk Bakery. There's the Bottled Baking Co. And without providing too much personal information, there's a lot of people in a very similar situation to me. I'll be honest with you guys, like, I thought anxiety, mental health was just something people use as an excuse. And then what I've been through in the past 3 months, fuck me, like, how people deal with this, I don't know. To begin with, like, the first few weeks, I dealt with it extremely badly. Like, I just got fucked up. It was my only way of fighting from the whole situation. And then realised that, you know, there's no way out of this. The only way doing that is down. And in a super, super dark place. You know, if you'd asked me a few weeks ago how I'd be standing here right now, I don't know. But then a switch flipped, and it's like, you know, there's only one way to sort it out. So I've now been sober for a month. I started, I cut out sugar out of my diet, because like a lot of my problems were very kind of physical health, like stomach problems and that. And I'd always wake up feeling shit. And I think it's because I hated doing what I was doing. But then I found out, like, I'd eat something sugary before bed and I'd wake up feeling really groggy the next day. I'm like, I have a very addictive personality. I've worked in the nightclub industry. I've then been a business owner. So whatever I do, I just get absolutely attached to it. And I found something new to get attached to, and it's actually feeling good. I'm feeling good about myself and waking up and feeling okay and actually being like, there is a future. And like, I can take what I have learned over the past 8 years. Because first of all, I was like, I'm an absolute failure. Everything I've done has been for nothing. Like, I've screwed up absolutely everything. And to be honest, my dad actually helped me through it the most, and he gave me this perspective that everything that you've done is for a reason. And to touch on that book that I read earlier, it's like life gives you little warnings, and those warnings are all my kind of health problems. And then if you don't take notice of them warnings, it's going to teach you a really hard lesson, and that was losing the business and everything going down. I've now learned from that hard lesson, and it's finally time to start coming back again.
I think that's been for everyone with a big letter here.
Thank you.
I've got a question about point 4. Obviously, as an agency, I'm going to ask the question, but it is really refreshing to say that you're going to learn the ads first. I think actually, from an agency perspective, it makes our job a lot easier. At what point, as a business owner, do you then switch over to an ad agency or someone to manage the ads for you?
Yeah, so I think the thing with us was that I tried to force too much. It's like I set myself revenue targets, and it's like originally we grew purely no ads. It was just by sending to Instagrammers, getting them to post. And then we kind of got to the point like, well, to get to the next step, we need to hit this amount of revenue. And then we moved into our manufacturing facility, and it was like, that was the point. Like, we then weren't making enough revenue to cover our costs. So that's when we just had to kind of push all of that. We then sort of had to get rid of that agency, because around this kind of just pre-iOS 14 stage, there was a lot of people calling themselves an ads agency, but really, Facebook did it so good and so easily for you. There were people who didn't bloody have a clue at all. So before going off on an absolute tangent, I think it's like there's a certain point where you need to understand what you're doing, but also work with people in the right stage as well. In the end, I was working with a very advanced agency that was working with massive brands who are doing like tens of millions a year. We were not that stage brand, so it was the wrong agency for us. It's about finding the right fit, and not all agencies are bad. But just right now, there's still agencies out there doing pure media buying, and everything is around creative. So if they're not providing you creative, you might as well just be doing it yourself.
Well, so what I'm gonna say, man, next time you start something, you know my number. The guy who will get 70,000, you said, on the splash page, people. Does not matter what you want to start. I'm in. Thank you very much. We'll have a lunch.